For this video, I want to do a little bit of custom tutorial. I'm working on a project where I need to prep these joints for paint. Of course, one of the number one options to do for prepping joints for paint is to not prep joints for paint. If you can find if you have figures that have matching colors and not have to paint them, but sometimes that's not possible. Well, in this case here, I'm using the Caliban body for a custom project, and I need these to be red. And they're Caliban right now is the only one that uses these knee joints. And of course, they're in white. So I'm going to do a quick little tutorial and show how I prep these parts to get them ready for paint. For this process, we're going to need, I use a marker just to mark the surface where I know where I've ground off to. I use a coarse barrel bit, a smaller diameter. Then to finish up grinding, I use a smooth one. And of course, the Dremel tool itself. And to take the parts apart, I use the hot water method. I boiled some water in the microwave, and I use a pair of pliers to pull them out so you don't burn yourself. And once the parts are nice and hot, they pop apart really easily. And the water, when the parts get hot, they get very pliable, so you can actually pop the joints out. And I take the needle nose pliers to push the joints all the way through and pull them out. Set these parts we're not working with on the side. Right now I'm going to focus on the knees. I will grind down a little bit of material on the bottoms of the thigh and on the top of the calf. But first, let's work on the knees. Move the hot water to the side. Clean off our workstation. And this is the only time my workstation is nice and clean when I'm going to do a video. Just to have parts laying around everywhere. For the marker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer of black. You don't have to be a black permanent marker. You don't even really have to do this. I'm just doing this to eyeball where I've already dremeled at. You don't need to take down all the material on the back. These parts will not be touching and making contact with anything. But I do suggest smoothing down. There's a little seam line. You can see the molding lines through here. I'm just going to mark those. I'm just going to do mark this to know where I've been. It's kind of like a scratch coat when you're painting a car. And color the joint. You want to take down enough of the material where you can cover it paint where it won't cause any issues when you're articulating the figure. So I'm going to take down probably not much. It'll take basically just enough of the surface where once I paint it and seal it, it won't interfere with the articulation of the figure. It won't bind and scratch your paint off. And I'll let that one sit to the side. I'm going to go ahead and mark these. Grind down this material. Plus, you can get rid, while you're doing this, you can get rid of the sprue marks. There's an ugly sprue mark right here. I'll grind that off. And do we have any seam lines? Yes, there's a seam line through here. And through here. We're not going to worry about that too much today. I'll hit the high spots, hit it. Mainly this stuff will be worked off with sandpaper. And you got a little bit of seam back through here. You also want to take since these are going to be going from white and the maroon here red, but they didn't paint up here, I'm going to put a little bit of color up here. So I want to smooth the surface down, take the surface down a little bit on the top. And that way I can put paint on that and seal it. And so when I articulate the figure, you won't see the white. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and Do this one. See another big sprue mark right there. And put color in the top so I know what to ground off. Go from there. Get my Dremel bit in. And you want to take your time. You don't want to go too fast this and take off too much material. You can always take more off, but you can't put back on. Most of the time. You see where you mark your parts, you know exactly where you ground off to. You try to keep your grinds even too. You want to be very careful too to keep a tight grip on your parts and your Dremel. Sometimes it can snag the material and you don't have a good grip on the material, the part you're grinding on, you could fling it across the room. And always wear eye protection when you're doing this. You want to be mindful too, there's the screw on top. On the barrel bit like this, you'll have the screw on top. If you're just watching the grinder, you'll actually snag the knee, the actual sculpt section of the figure, and you don't want to do that. Especially if you're working on parts that's a little more difficult to get and replace. That looks pretty good, so let's move on to the thigh. On to the next part. Now for the flat surfaces like this, I don't normally use a Dremel bit. I'll just take a nice coarse piece of sandpaper, drag it up marked, I can just slowly drag it. Then I'm taking down the top surface. You can change directions to make sure you get all the... Taking down a nice little thin layer off the top of the material. You want to follow this up with some smoother sandpaper, of course. That looks pretty good. Time I smooth that up, that should be enough taken down to the thin coat of red on here. Just one more for good measure. 2 for luck. Okay. Let's go ahead and switch to smoother bit. This one has a flatter surface on it. You can get a little bit closer to the little tighter crevices through here. You can see it puts a nice smooth surface on through the joints after we ground down the surface with the rougher barrel bit. The smoother bit makes a nice, almost like factory finish on the part. I think you can just take your fingernail, just little burrs on the side, and just scrape that off. A little bit of extra finish sanding with some fine sandpaper. And after a little bit of cleaning and prep, this is ready for primer. So after this step, just a little bit of soap and water, and you're ready to prime and paint. Same with these parts here. I just want to hit it with the Dremel bit, smooth these down, a little bit of sandpaper, wash, clean, ready for paint. That pretty well sums up what you need to do to prep joints for paint. Appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Like, share, subscribe.